We're live from number 35 John Hammond Street in Accra. Hello, good evening. Welcome to the hottest news bulletin in the entire capital. Hot edition on 3FM 92.7. We're live also on all our social media platforms at 3FM 92.7. My name is Noble Crosby Annan. In the bulletin this evening, Kennedy Japan campaign team hits back at Ashanti Regional NPP Chairman Bernard Nkwibosiako over threats to cause the flag bearer hopefuls arrests.
Manumi Husami wa NPP Moya Nkwasiafo kwanya wo faswa wo de kasa mechrew a showdown ani ade no ene manintwa sanya sa now threatening me biwa meme yachew.
Tonight we'll be getting more on the ramifications of the seeming war of words as the governing party heads to the November 4 presidential primaries. Meanwhile, flag bearer aspirant Francis Adynimo says the unity of the NPP has been shaken by events of August 26. He's calling for efforts to unify the party after the November 4 presidential primaries. Also in the bulletin, former governor of the Bank of Ghana, Dr. Kwabena Dufo, is requesting Parliament's leadership to address the central bank's current crisis. We have an exclusive interview with the former finance minister. And later in the bulletin, Ghana begins processes for development of a legal framework on acquisition and management of improvised explosive devices in the country.
Usually we have other laws that are broad to deal with certain issues, but you need specifics and you need to be able to pin it down because you are dealing with it within a certain context, which is violent extremism and terrorism within West Africa.
Well, we have details of these stories and a lot more coming to you in the next 60 minutes. If you stay with us, you can also join us on our social media platforms at 3FM 92.7. You are a big part of this conversation. I'll be glad to share your thoughts with the rest of the world. Let's settle for the details of the stories. We're beginning the bulletin from the political front as the flag bearer hopeful of the NPP Kennedy Japan campaign team has called the bluff of Ashanti Regional Chairman of the NPP, Bernard Nkwibosiako, over his threat to cause the arrest of the flag bearer hopeful. Now, Chairman Wontumi, as he's popularly called, at a news conference said he will cause the arrest of Kennedy Japan should he threaten him again. The Central Member of Parliament, Kennedy Japan, last Saturday at a rally hit hard at the party and its leading members, accusing them of divisiveness ahead of the presidential primaries on November 4.
I dare you to make a mistake, and you will see men in this country.
So that was Kennedy in Japan while addressing his supporters in the Ashanti region in the Kennedy Showdown Walk there. Speaking about some of the happenings in the party, he mentioned Chairman Wontumi daring him that if Chairman Wontumi dares him, Kennedy Japan, well, there's going to be another showdown. But in a press conference today, Chairman Wontumi challenged Kennedy Japan to produce evidence of him insulting Alan Chairman Ting.
Manumi Husami wa NPP Moya Nkwasiafo kwanya wo faswa wo de kasa mechrew a showdown ani ade no ene manintwa sanya sa now threatening me biwa meme yachew. Ayafutuo ena me de ma because why sa Ahmed Sure Emonia de Swali as a one no omuni wiase bio And to the Amesra, we are going to say, free no quay. A man, and yes, sir. And as I would say, Uber to my Bibiazo Swa. And I had no cross 2020, and so Ashanti Nanya, dear, Central Region, so send in the city. Central Region, so I not my own to me or Namini. And to the Amesra, I want to say, Kennedy, can you open to me? Na can't you open to me? Na so to me a free and that day no I on the 4th and I exactly 1 month. Na ya kwa kotwa no. But the master move baby we Ezekiel chapter 18 verse 22. O say so the boy ni best safari na kwa mbone so. Na wafa onyakopa akwan obenya nkwa. Enti aka 1 month. Anya se obeluso ana mepe. Na momu nsema wo kan ya de a wudidi party for atem polling station for one to amame a wagimi ene sa ne ma no. Sa wo bepa o ma chew. Na wa hwe wa kwan a wo betimi afa so a ayade a party for no wo benya onyankopon anim animonyam.
So that was the voice of the Ashanti Regional Chairman of the NPP, Bernard Nchibuesiako, popularly known as Chairman Wontumi there, challenging Canadian Japan to produce evidence of him insulting Alan Chamating, also going ahead to say that he will call for the arrest of the flag bearer hopeful Canadian Japan if he threatens him again, making an example and an instance with what happened with investigative journalist Ahmed Swale there. Now, well, a short while ago, the campaign team of Canadian Japan held a counter-presser to respond to Chairman Wontumi. William Evans Inkom is my colleague in the Ashanti region. He's joining us for some more details on the happenings in the political front of the NPP in the Ashanti region, the back and forth between Canadian Japan and Chairman Wontumi. Evans, good evening to you. Thank you so much for joining us on the program. Tell us more about this press conference in response.
Well, so this particular press conference was addressed by the spokesperson for Kennedy Japan here in the Ashanti region, lawyer William Kusi. And he has also accused Wontumi of embezzlement. This time around, lawyer William Kusi alleges that 20% of a fund, which was actually deducted from the 1 million per constituency, was allocated to Bernard Nchibuesiako for party projects. One has to do with an erection of a new party office, but that is yet to be executed, according to lawyer William Kusi. If that was done or has been done, then Wontumi wouldn't have even held his press conference at the secretariat of, or the campaign secretariat of the vice president, which of course exactly the place that the press conference was held. But also reacting directly to Wontumi's claim that a similar threat to the late Ahmed Swale saw that investigative journalist lost his life. William Kusi has also said that if Wontumi perhaps is not aware, then he just wants to let him know that the vice president is the chairman of the police council, and that particular issue is also being investigated by the police. So for Wontumi to make that level of allegation only puts the vice president in a very bad light, because the vice president also has a versatile responsibility to show interest in getting to the very roots of the murder of the investigative journalist.
Evans, thanks for those updates. But with the background you've provided for us, bring us more on the seeming war of words between Canadian Japan and Chairman Wontumi, and what Chairman Wontumi's supporters have also been saying when he was addressing the presser. Who was he flanked by?
Well, absolutely. So let me just give you a genesis of how this whole thing started. So that was on September 30 when Canadian Japan launched the second edition of its showdown walk in the Ashanti region. Of course, to galvanize the base ahead of the November 4 presidential primaries. I mean, he needs the numbers to be able to at least secure that sole slot, which of course will afford him lead the party into the 2024 general election. So at the rally ground, that was when he started making some allegations. For instance, when he said that Wontumi has been using his media house to launch a barrage of insults and, of course, abusive words on some leaders of the party, citing the former member of member Alan Kwadwo Kyerematen. Of course, we all know that he has exited the MPP to form the Movement for Change. And these were some of the things that led, that informed Alan Kwadwo Kyerematen's decision. So today's press conference was just about to happen, but it was just a matter of time. And indeed, true to some of us, our anticipation, that particular press conference was held. Of course, Wontumi was flanked by some regional executives of the party. I cited the regional secretary of the party, Adomapia, who was there. The regional communication director of the party, of course, Dennis Kwakwa happens to be the former communication director. He is now eyeing the Mampon's seat, so he's now been replaced by another person. He was there, and of course, few other party members. For Ken's team, Ken was also flanked by some leading members of his campaign team in the Ashanti region, but known among them is a renowned lawyer, William Kusi, who addressed the media.
Evans Inkum, thank you so much for joining us on the program. William Evans Inkum is our Ashanti regional correspondent who's been following the conversations between Kennedy Japon's campaign team and that of Bernard Ntwibu-Esiako, the regional chairman of the MPP in the Ashanti region. I have on the line Dr. Jonathan Asante-Okyere, who's been paying attention to the conversation I've had with William Evans Inkum. Dr. Asante-Okyere is a political analyst and a lecturer at UCC. Dr. Okyere, thank you so much for joining us on the program, and thank you for holding on. You've listened to the back and forth between Kennedy Japan and Chairman Wontumi. To you, what is your understanding of the seeming war of words between Kennedy Japan and Chairman Wontumi? Is there cause for worry, or this is just usual politicking?
Thank you, Lumon. Good evening to your listeners. It's quite unfortunate the MPP is degenerating into such levels of precariousness. I think that the self-destruct button has already been pressed long ago, from the time that Mr. Allen, decided to resign from the party, and then followed by a few barrage of misunderstanding between the various party leaders.
Right.
So the point is that the self-destruct button has been pressed, and in Greek tragedy, for example, they talk about what we call hamartia as an error. Once it happens, there is no turning back, and it comes with some kinds of event that finally leads to the person's disaster or the person's fall. And if you just oppose that to what is happening to the NPP, there's nothing different within this. The war of words, quite unfortunate. And I just don't know what they are trying to prove.
Doc, I believe there are internal processes for settling disputes. For Chairman Wontumi to threaten to cause Ken's arrest suggests he feels his life could be under threat. Do you agree, or do you get that sense?
Well, he's saying something that he cannot even afford to do. If there is anyone that ought to be arrested, it's Chairman Wontumi himself. They are contaminating, and he should be very worried that should there be a change of government, he is definitely going to be in jail. Because that destruction of the environment under his supervision, with his company involved, I think that he has a lot of questions to answer in this country. And so it is just unfortunate that he threatened that he's going to cause his arrest. I mean, I think that it's much ado about nothing. I don't even know the kind of police that will want to go and arrest Ken. If you really want internal harmony of the party to be sustained, at this point in time, as I said earlier on, the self-destruct button has been pressed, and there is no going back. Because you see, the establishment wants a particular candidate to win. And so when that particular candidate side or come, that's something unthinkable. That should, under normal circumstance, attract some kind of reputation, some kind of condemnation from that side. You don't hear anything like that. So you see, you have Ken and the other two, Dr. Kuto and what's the name?
A dynamo.
Yes. You see, they are on the other side virtually. It's like they are in opposition. So the only thing Ken is doing is to ruffle more feathers, get them unsettled, and you have a loose cannon like Wuntumi, who will easily buy into that, and that in itself will re-energize the campaign base of Ken. So you see, at the end of the day, what Wuntumi has done will go back to affect Dr. Bawumia himself, because whatever he's doing it in his name. Because we know where you belong, we know where your support lies. You see, and so things of that nature. I mean, I just have my regret that in the first place, well, I don't know how efficient Wuntumi is, but a party like MPP shouldn't have such a person, such uncouth, unpolished person as the regional chairman of the party. I don't know whether it is because of money and other considerations don't come in. But the man is simply not the right person for that particular position. But of course, elections were conducted, and then he won. It's just unfortunate. But I mean, as for that threat of causing Ken's arrest, I think that she should rather withdraw that. If you also want to attack him verbally, he can go ahead and do so. But to threaten to cause his arrest, then I think that I don't know which police are going to do that. I don't know whether he considers internal harmony within the party of priority.
Right. Doc, it brings me to my last question, and briefly, do you think the party needs to intervene in this matter, and how can the party intervene?
Well, there is a need for them to intervene. One is a regional chairman, and you know that is a stronghold of the party. It appears that he's not been able to sustain the internal harmony. Of course, he may have some level of control over the regional executives as chairman. He may have, because listening to your reporter, behind the scenes, you have the regional secretary and other executives flanking, Chairman Wuntumi in his address of the press. So what should they do? I think they can decide to call them and then ask them to be a bit decorous in the way, they are treating, war of words. It doesn't augur well for our democracy, and it's as if they are creating more tension within the party, getting to the period where they are going to conduct the elections. The General Secretary can equally do so by calling them. But you see, calling Ken and Wuntumi, I think Ken will not go. It will rather be Ken and Dr. Bawumia, because they are all, presidential hopefuls, right?
Right.
At this point in time, irrespective of the fact that Dr. Bawumia is a vice president, he is also a flag bearer hopeful. So they belong to similar levels, if you understand where I'm coming from.
Right.
So if you call Wuntumi and Kennedy Japan, I think Ken will not attend that particular meeting to ensure that they smoke the peace pipe. He will not. I think there is something else that is actually going on. That intimidation that he talks about, harassment that he talks about. As for the money, they will all be sharing money. But of course, one from the establishment will have more to display. But this intimidation and mentioning, branch executives and then polling station, whatever, if they don't vote for Bawumia, so, it is possible that, you see, those down there, they don't have the resources. Their level of education is not up to a certain level. And so it is very easy for them to toe that particular line. So if you hear persons like Kennedy Japan talking about this kind of intimidation, harassment, and all those things, there is some level of truism in that. And I think that if they should call a meeting between himself and the vice president, that should be something that they must. try to deal with. But I don't know how far they will be able to deal with that before they get to that November 4th. As for the wound, to me, listen, I don't see anything coming out of that.
Dr. Otri, thank you so much for your time with us on the program. Dr. Jonathan Asante-Otri speaking with us there. He is a political scientist and a lecturer at the University of Cape Coast, offering some perspectives on the ongoing war of words between Member of Parliament for Asante Central and flag bearer hopeful on the ticket of the NPP, Kennedy Ejapon, and the Ashanti Regional Chairman of the party, Bernard Entry Boesiako, also known as Chairman Wontumi there. We'll be getting more on this also in our subsequent bulletins, but we're still staying from the camp of the NPP on issues concerning the party's unity, because flag bearer hopeful Francis Adai Nimo says the party's unity has been tested by events of August 26, which culminated into the resignation of Alan Chematin. The former Santimampo MP has been speaking to 3FM on happenings in the party ahead of November 4 presidential primaries. We'll be hearing from Adainimo shortly, but we'll bring you that conversation that Adainimo had in a moment. But let's try and bring you some more stories on other key happenings in the country. This is still Hot Edition on 3FM 92.7. Well, a day after the minority in Parliament led a protest to remove the governor of the Bank of Ghana, a former governor and finance minister, Dr. Kwabena Dufo, is requesting Parliament's leadership to address the central bank's current crisis. Speaking exclusively to 3FM, Dr. Dufo stated that the House has the power to address the challenges while maintaining the sanctity of the central bank. Now, the minority in Parliament, they have been actively advocating for the resignation of the central bank governor and his two deputies. Dr. Addison has been accused of corruption, malfeasance, and misgovernance. On Tuesday, the minority in Parliament led a protest to the Bank of Ghana, calling on the governor to resign. A former governor of the Bank of Ghana, Dr. Kwabena Dufo, requested Parliament to play a crucial role in resolving the bank's issues. Let's take a listen to what Dr. Kwabena Dufo has been saying.
Parliament is a very powerful institution. You know that? They are so powerful that they control the pace. You understand? Parliament can order the governor. They can order the Minister of Finance. When I was the Minister of Finance, I'm going there every year to present the budget on behalf of my president. And as soon as I put the document down, I'll be in their hands. Parliament could say, look, go back and tell your president, we will not allow him to spend more than 80% of this. They have the power to say so. A very powerful institution.
So you would call for, say, a parliamentary inquiry into this?
The Parliament should take charge of everything.
Yeah, should be a parliamentary inquiry into these issues.
Sure. They have charge. They have power over almost everything. They are a very powerful institution. You understand? And it dawned on me when I became the Minister of Finance. Whenever I send my budget there, after presentation, I'll be waiting for approval. Even after the approval, the appropriation also depends on them. It's a very powerful institution.
Minority is coming from Parliament. They are within Parliament. Luckily, they have the numbers, 137. They could be using the tools at their disposal, say, to occasion this parliamentary probe. I'm
not going to probe.
Yes.
I'm saying that they should take charge of all these issues. They have power, but they are the keepers of the purse. You understand? You can only spend money when Parliament approves. They approve all the loans. You understand? It shows how powerful they are.
I want to read you the governor's words in his defense. He has. The
governor has listened to you?
Yeah, he has spoken to the public, and in his defense, the governor has said quite a number of things, defended his record, and I would like to read some of the governor's words. For instance, he says that in 2017 and 2018, the bank recorded negative equity due to legacy liquidity support to banks that was granted in 2015 and 16, and they bounced back and posted profits ranging from about 1.5 billion from 2019. Even at the height of COVID, they posted profits. So this is clearly, you cannot fault his management of the central bank, and he did this at a time when the country was in crisis. Again, the finance minister, who he reports to, or not to report, because of course the Bank of Ghana is an independent institution.
Well, he reports to the president,
but they are what do you call it?
They work together.
As a word, they work together.
Yeah.
In his defense, he has said that Governor Addison is a competent professional of quiet courage. In the nearly 7 years we have worked together, we have ensured the inviolability of the banking system, the establishment of the consolidated bank, the development bank of Ghana, over $10 billion in the Eurobond market and Afro-Exim Bank, inflation down to single digit of 7.9%, and managed an impressive period of currency stability with the implementation of the Gold for Oil program. It is either simply the height of irony or a sad reflection of the state or public discourse in our country that this man who steps up in a period of unprecedented and global economic meltdown and crisis is being pilloried for his good work. This is how the man at the fiscal side of things, the finance manager, has risen in defense of his bank manager.
What's the reaction from Parliament? The keepers of the peace.
The minority are the ones who spearheaded the demonstration yesterday. The noise around the central bank, which you have a problem with, they spearheaded it.
So they don't agree with what they are saying?
Obviously, they disagree.
Yes. You see, there's a talk of a loss. We can have a loss arising out of operations of an organization. I will have long companies, The total revenue, the total expenditure, the difference can produce profit or loss. So we have operational loss, operational profit. We can also have a loss arising from even the fluctuations in the dollar maybe you have bought for your company. That's not an operational loss or gain. And in the balance sheet, you treat it differently.
Right.
Okay. That's what I'm saying, that Parliament should respond to it.
If you say Parliament should respond to it, if you say Parliament should take charge, there are a number of parliamentary, if Parliament takes its toolkit box, there are a number of tools in it. There are a number of avenues. Exactly what should Parliament do, Dr.
They are talking about the law, which I have mentioned. There's Section 30, subsection 6 or so. How the governor central bank give money to government in those circumstances.
Should Dr. Addison be the subject of a parliamentary inquiry?
Then they respond to the law. Did they go by the law? This is something you and I can pronounce here.
Right.
Why do we have laws? To regulate our behavior, our operations.
That was former governor of the Bank of Ghana, Dr. Dufour, speaking with my colleague Duke Mensah-Opoku on the happenings concerning the central bank and the call by the minority for the governor of the Bank of Ghana, Dr. Ernest Addison, as well as his two deputies to step down. And that is just part of the fallout from the Occupy BOG protest. In the meantime, the minority has served notice of getting back onto the street shortly because they were unable to present their petition to the governor of the Bank of Ghana in person, Dr. Ernest Addison. Well, as you may already be aware, Dr. Ernest Addison delegated authority to the Director of Security at the Bank of Ghana, but that did not sit well with the minority, saying that the governor of the bank has disrespected them. Share with us your thoughts on any of our social media platforms at 3FM 92.7, particularly on Facebook. We're live also on 3news.com. Let's remind ourselves of the top stories this evening as Canada-Japan campaign team has hit back the Ashanti Regional MPP Chairman Benedict Chibuesiako of a threat to cause the flag-bearer hopeful's arrest. We're exploring the ramifications of this seeming war of words as the governing party heads to the November 4 primaries. All we've heard already from our Ashanti Regional correspondent William Evans Inkum, as well as a political analyst, Dr. Jonathan Asantiotre there, offering some interesting perspectives on the dynamics going forward and the need for the hierarchy of the NPP to intervene in the self-destruct button that he says the party has pressed. Well, still on happenings within the NPP ahead of its presidential primaries, flag-bearer aspirant Francis Adynamo says the unity of the party has been shaken by events of August 26, and he is therefore calling for unity after the November 4 polls.
Anybody who will say that the party is so united now may be giving the false impression. So certainly, after August 26, the unity of the party is shaking. And we all have to work on it. It is amongst ourselves. How do we see ourselves? How do we see one another as a family? And so we are on the slippery grounds as far as the unity of the party is concerned. And that imposes that responsibility on delegates to elect the person who is the unifier, the person with whom everybody can say we are comfortable with this person to provide the leadership to the party. I mean, you have seen the events which have happened. Mr. Alan Chemantin has taken the decision to leave the party. And for me, that is unpleasant as far as I'm concerned. And I would wish that it didn't happen that way. But that is his personal decision. And nobody should assume that it is only one person of him who he says he's leaving the party. And so there may be so many others who may be dissatisfied. And we need to see how we can address all the issues and get everybody recognized, respected for the battle of 2024. Looking at the circumstances of the party now, the party needs an unblemished and a unifying new face to lead the party so as to achieve our objective of breaking the 8 and renew the mandate of the party in government for 12 years and for 16 years. There must be an internal unity in the party which should be intact. And so we need to strive to ensure that all members of the party, we stay together as a united front. Once we are able to ensure our internal unity, our strength internally is guaranteed, then we can go for the external battle and be successful. And because the party gave birth to this current government, the performance must be appreciable to the citizens of the land. Because in the general elections, Ghanaians will look at the performance of government, which is seen in the performance of the economy, whether living conditions are flexible, there are living conditions of citizens, expresses in happiness by citizens. Then they can also be willing to renew the mandate for the party.
Francis Adynamo is a flag-bearer hopeful of the NPP, speaking there about the need for the party to close ranks after the November 4 primaries. And this is coming at a time where another flag-bearer hopeful of the party, Canada-Japan, is on a war of words with chairman of the party in the Ashanti region, Chairman Wontumi, over claims of insult and not having the party at heart. You're listening to Hot Edition on 3FM 92.7. Let's bring you more stories this evening. And Ghana has kick-started processes for the development of a legal framework on the acquisition and management of improvised explosives devices in the country. This has become necessary in the face of increasing terrorist extremism and violence in the Sahel. Here in Ghana, though, there is a national framework for countering violent extremism. It does not provide specific detail on explosives. Deputy Director at the Small Arms Commission, Johnson Asante-Chum, indicates legal specifications are key in reducing the prevalence of these weapons. We'll be hearing more on this shortly, but let's speak with the Deputy Director at the Small Arms Commission, Johnson Asante-Chum, for some more perspectives and update on the need for this framework. Mr. Chum, thank you so much for joining us in the program. Good evening to you. Again, why has the development of this framework become important beyond the increasing terrorism experiences and violence in the Sahel?
Good evening, Crosby, and good evening to your listeners, and thanks for having me. And thanks for your question also. It's important because, as you rightly situated the question, if you look around us, there is an increasing activities of terrorism and violent extremist activities around Sahel, including coastal West Africa. And fortunately, Ghana is the only country within this group of states that has been spared the effect of violent extremist activities. And therefore, to ensure that our preventive mechanisms and activities are strengthened, we needed to take a step in dealing with the tools and instruments that are used mostly in perpetrating this form of violence against state and against state infrastructure. And therefore, it was important that we took this step to begin to ensure that IEDs in particular are dealt with in a way that gives the states and the security agencies a lot more control over these activities.
Right, Dr. Chum, let's talk about the subjects in question again, Mr. Chum. For improvised explosive devices, if you're breaking it down for the ordinary Guinean to understand, what are they and how dangerous could they be in our homes, and how can they contribute in promoting terrorism and violence extremism?
All right, so as the name suggests, these are improvised explosive devices. They are very crude devices that are made, by people who have some knowledge in explosives or some very crude knowledge, knowing that if you piece these devices, this chemical, together, you could trigger it to explode, and the effect would be dire and a lot more casualties, would fall. So it's a very good way of doing it, but there are precursors and other devices that are pieced together in doing this, and therefore we need to have some control over it. We are looking at it also within the context of commercial explosives. How do you deal with it in a way that they also don't get into the hands of violent extremist groups and individuals and terrorist individuals? So you look at it from various angles, and therefore we look at how do you manage it, what is the legal framework, that deals with it. Fortunately, Ghana has some legislation, some policy framework that deals with it, but we have not as yet pinned down to the specifics of IEDs, in a way that we need to deal with it, taking into consideration the West African and the Sahel situation that, faces all of us.
That said, if that is of concern, that although there seems to be a framework for countering violent extremism that does not seem to be working. What new thing are we seeking to put in place to either relook at this framework or create a new one?
Well, so let me correct this. Not as if there's a framework that is not working. There is a framework that deals with violent extremism and terrorist activities generally. What we are doing today is look at the specific issue of improvised explosive devices. Violent extremism and terrorism activities could be undertaken in various forms or shapes, using even small arms, using all forms of weapons. But the issue of IED, so improvised explosive devices, have a wider effect when it is detonated, within crowded areas, or when it is used against some national infrastructure or the other. So, yes, there is a framework to deal with violent extremism and terrorism. You can talk about the Fusion Center, the counter-terrorism, measures have been put in place, and all that, their CRY initiatives. They are all working. But this is just narrowing down the specific tools that also need to be dealt with.
Right. Thank you so much for your time with us on the program. We've been speaking with Johnson Asante-Twum, who is the Deputy Director of the Small Arms Commission, there on the framework and how important it is in the fight against terrorism and violence extremism in the phase of processes that have been begun or kick-started for the development of a legal framework on the acquisition and management of improvised explosive devices in the country. We'll be getting some business news shortly, but let's remind you that the Health Committee of Parliament, the minority side, they're currently in a meeting after a visit to the Kolebu Teaching Hospital to ascertain claims over dialysis. Patients are refunded following backlash over illegal new fees by management of the facility. We understand that this meeting is underway between the Health Committee of Parliament and management of the Kolebu Teaching Hospital. The Health Committee, mainly the minority side of the House. This is a subject we'll be updating you on in our bulletins. Business news is up next. Well, Michael Obodo is joining us. Michael, good evening to you. How are you doing? What do you have for us in the business package this evening?
Welcome to the business segment here on Hot Edition. My name is Michael Obodo. Now coming up, Fisheries and Aquaculture Ministry reveals 14 trawlers that were operating in the country's waters have ceased operations due to strict regulations of the space. Well, now to the details. Now, Fisheries and Aquaculture Development Ministry has revealed that some 14 trawlers that were operating in the country's waters have ceased operations due to the strict regulation of the space. Speaking to the media on the sidelines of the EFD Ghana Policy Day organized by Issa and Gimpa, Deputy Sector Minister Moses Enim stated that the vessels failed to meet Ghana's licensing requirements, hence did not have the permit to operate. Well, away from that, meanwhile, Ghana consumes about 1 million tons of fish annually, with the country importing close to 60% of its fish at a cost of about $200 million per year. However, Ghana's fish farming industry is growing at 136% annually. According to Chairman of the Chamber of Aquaculture, Dr. Henry Enim Sumwa, fish farming is a viable alternative to bridge marine fish production gap and eventually for export. Now, away from that, the executive director of the Ghana Real Estate Developers Association, Samia Megaibo, says the collapse of buildings in the country recently have the potential to reduce demand of high-rise buildings. At least 6 buildings have collapsed across the country since the beginning of this year, with the most recent happening out of Angkor in Accra. Samia Megaibo believes the situation is troubling and could have dire consequences for the real estate sector and the economy.
People's interest in living in high-rise buildings. It took a long time for people to, forget about that situation. So anybody in high-rise building, you see an aircraft passing, then you get worried. It is the same situation when you are living in properties or properties are under construction and they keep collapsing. It brings some kind of apathy in the system. People get worried, and it has a long way of affecting business. But as industry players, we will stand tall. We will overcome. We will discuss the issues and bring to bear the actors to make sure that we get the right things going.
That was Executive Director of the Ghana Real Estate Developers Association, Sami Amegaibo. Let's take you back to our earlier story on developments in the fishery sector.
Our local demand today is quite high. Despite that, currently, I'm sure there are some processed fish that are being exported. A lot of it is coming from freshwater, which is that. So we think that we really look at the domestic demand first. But on projections in the next 5 to 6 years, if things work as we have planned, then the production of or farm fish, let me put it that way, can expand. The growth today is around 136% per annum for Ghana, which is quite a huge growth. And we are hoping that once the practices are sustainable, then it's easy to expand, and we may see some traction on exports.
That was an update from the fisheries sector by Dr. Henry Inim-Sumwa, who is the chairman of the Chamber of Aquaculture, speaking on the viability of fish farming as an alternative to bridge marine fish production. Now let's go back to our earlier story on the Deputy Fisheries Minister commenting on some trawlers that have left the shores of the country.
They couldn't match the heat, so they decided to leave. But we are still holding on to them because we are saying that they should have taken authorization before leaving. So the Fisheries Commission is engaging. We are saying they should put up their transpondent so that we can know where they are, so as long as they are on Ghana's flag, so we know their activities. Either to label them as IUU vessels and use their IMO number, which they cannot change, the International Maritime Organization number, which they cannot change, and use it to label them as IUU. Okay, so 15 of them could not match the heat. As I speak to you, between 35 to 40 last season were able to get their license, because we are matching them to the regimental licensing regime that we've put in place.
Deputy Minister of Fisheries and Aquaculture Development, Moses Enim, speaking then. That will be all for the business segment here on Hot Edition. Our website, 3news.com, has more stories for you. My name is Michael Obodu. Thank you for listening. As always, please stay safe.
Hello and welcome to the sports segment here on the 3FM Hot Edition. My name is Bill Lishen. We're going to start off from the Black Stars because the head coach Chris Hughton has released his 23-man squad ahead of the friendlies against the USA and Mexico. And here are the list for you. Here's the list for you. Loris Atizigi, Abdul Manaf Nuruddin, and Richard Ofori are the goalkeepers. In defense, we have Tariq Lamte, Ali Duseidu, Joseph Edu, Nicolas Opoku, Alexander Jiku, Daniel Amate, Abdul Fattah Hamid, Gideon Mensah, Osman Bukari, Joseph Pinto in midfield. Thomas Partey is back in the squad. Edmond Addo, Salih Samid, Elisha Owusu, Ransford Yeboah, Konigsdorfer, Mohamed Kudus, and in attack we have Jordan Ayew, Enes Nyama, Iñaki Williams, and Antoine Semenyo. You might not have heard the name of Andre Ayew because he has been dropped by Chris Hughton ahead of the friendly matches against Mexico and the USA. Moving on, a group of Ghanaian football fans has organized a protest against the current leadership of the Ghana Football Association led by Kurt Okraku. This demonstration, known as #OccupyGFA, aims to express discontent with the current state of football governance in the country, citing concerns about transparency and fairness in the administration. The Free Sports team followed the protesters and asked them a few questions. Here are their responses.
Yeah, for Okrekumanté, that's why he's doing. He wants to do the football as politics. This is not fair. Football is not for politics. We are the youth. We know how to play ball. You want to give us a chance so that we can enjoy and play ball. Yes, give us a chance.
I'm personally here because Kurt is making our football league very bad, especially the coast league. But now, when you are a young guy playing coast football, you see it as nothing.
GFA is going to have new faces. Yeah. The current administration, they are corrupt. Yes. It's a cabal. If you like, it's the same continuation of Kwesi Nyantakyi, who has been sanctioned by FIFA. And I'm calling on FIFA. Silence is betrayal. Omission is a crime. Yes. FIFA, Africa is crying. Ghana is crying. Help us to fight corruption.
Africa is crying, Ghana is crying. Those were the words of one of the leaders of the demonstration, that's Al-Hassan Yahaya, together with some protesters who joined in the demonstration. They started from Accra and they moved on to the Ministry of Youth and Sports to make their voices heard, and they also moved on to the Ghana Football Association Secretariat also to make their voices heard earlier today. Now, moving on to some stories abroad, the 2030 World Cup will be held across 6 countries in 3 continents. FIFA has confirmed. Spain, Portugal, Morocco have been named as co-hosts, with the opening 3 matches taking place in Uruguay, Argentina, and Paraguay. The opening matches in South America to mark the World Cup's centenary, as it will be 100 years since the inaugural tournament in Montevideo. So all 6 countries would get automatic qualification to the 2030 FIFA World Cup. That brings an end to the sports segment here on the 3FM Hot Edition. My name is Belishen, and Akofa is standing by with the latest in entertainment.
It's now time for the entertainment news segment here on Hot Edition. We begin with Ghana's most beautiful. Now, the Volta region last won a GMB crown 13 years ago with MFA as its representative. 26-year-old teacher Selom is saddled with the task to recapture the prestigious crown for the region. Can Selom grab a GMB crown for the Volta region? Well, the self-motivated finalist has been opening up about her chances.
Born Magdalene Gada Selom, the native of Keta in the Volta region, is smart, eloquent, and fun-loving. Selom described GMB as a great grooming platform.
I've been able to gather courage to be able to stand on stage and present. It has shaped my life, the way that I communicate, the way that I talk, the way that I'm able to let people into my world and convince them with what I say, what I do, and then hard work, yes. Because being on GMB is not just by saying that I am good. You need to put in the work. You have to go and research. You need to learn.
The Volta region last won the coveted crown in 2012.
After Queen Emefa, Mama Gan herself, yes, after Queen Emefa, we've not been able to win the crown again. Winning first runner-up, yes, first runner-up, first runners, so...
You see yourself as a person to break that jinx?
There's a lot of pressure that Volta region has to take the crown. It's been so long and all that. What I will say is that it's not only about the crown, but I'm hopeful that this year it will come to Volta region.
We celebrate the Hogbechocho festival. Hogbechocho comes from 3 words. Ho meaning rise, Be meaning day, Chocho meaning crossing.
Salom, the poster girl for determination, goes into the final all braced up to win the crown back for the region.
But expect nothing but the best from your girl, because it's going to be our Volta region. Personally, I think I have to make my region proud because they've been there for me and I don't want to disappoint them on that day. No matter what may come my way, uplifting my region up there. That's all I'm going to do on that day.
Well, to some more stories now. 3 Entertainment's Crystal Kwame Aye is at the Africa Tourism Leadership Forum in Botswana. She describes the atmosphere at the launch and has a key message from the lead organizer at Africa Tourism Partners. Let's take a listen.
We've seen that TV3 is becoming synonymous with the Africa Tourism Leadership Forum. This is the 6th edition, and we are very grateful that we've come this far. And the ultimate goal here is to promote intra-Africa travel, start working towards changing the narratives around the continent, looking at the positives that we can share amongst ourselves to allow us to be able to experience our own environment. But the ultimate goal is to ensure that tourism becomes a key priority area in almost all African countries. To the level where countries could open up, allow visa openness, allow ease of connectivity or ease of access to other African countries for people to be able to travel across the continent, from the continent and within the continent. We believe that this is the only way that we can achieve the goal of growing the tourism arrivals in Africa.
Crystal Kwame Aye reporting for 3 Entertainment, Botswana.
Now to my final story. Ghanaian superstar Black Sheriff has bagged the award for Best International Flow at the 2023 BET Hip Hop Awards. This makes him the second Ghanaian artist to win in the category after Sarkodie won the very first edition in 2019. Although he lost to Benjamin Epps in 2022, Blacko bagged another nomination in 2023 and has gone on to win it this time. The official announcement and BET Hip Hop Awards was taped from Cobb Energy Center in Atlanta on October 3 and is expected to air on October 10. Congratulations going out to Blacko and the entire team, and that's how we end the entertainment news segment here on Hot Edition. Noble Crosby Annan will be taking over your radio now.
That was a cover with some entertainment news. Before her was some sport news and some business news as well with Michael Obodo. But before we go, let's remind you of our top stories this evening. Kennedy-Japan campaign team hits back at Ashanti Regional NPP Chairman Bernard Ntwibuesiak over threats to cause the flag bearer hopeful's arrest. We explored the ramifications of the seeming war of words as the governing party heads to the November 4 presidential primaries. Meanwhile, flag bearer aspirant Francis Adynamo says the unity of the party has been shaken by events of August 26. He's calling for efforts to unify the party after the November 4 primaries. Also, former governor of the Bank of Ghana, Dr. Kwabena Dufo, is requesting Parliament's leadership to address the central bank's current crisis. We brought you an exclusive interview with the former finance minister on the back of that subject. Also, we brought you some stories on Ghana beginning process for the development of a legal framework on acquisition and management of improvised explosive devices in the country. Well, you're reminded that you need to join the Sunrise team this evening on X Spaces, formerly Twitter, we're talking about beyond the streets. Have demonstrations won as anything yet? Join Helen Apiampo for Johnny Hughes, William Asiedu. There's also Olile Salvador, an entertainment journalist. There's also Kojo Shelding, owner of Kojo Shelding Studios. And as I said, the poet John Dumelo, farmer, politician, and entrepreneur. Private legal practitioner Martin P will also join the spaces. Courage Nobi, educationists and political activists. There are some other political activists. Bridget Totu, a journalist, will also join the spaces. Shamima Muslim will also be there. So join us on X Spaces this evening at 7 p.m. Wednesday, October 4, 2023. Let's talk about beyond the streets. Have demonstrations won as anything? We've seen 2 demonstrations in the past couple of weeks. The latest is the Occupy Bank of Ghana protest led by the members of the minority members of parliament, as well as flanked by some political parties and civil society organizations. But before that was also another protest Occupy Jolobi House by members of Fix the Country. We'll be glad to host you on our platforms. But that's how we wrap up on the bulletin here on 3FM 92.7. There's always more news on our website, 3news.com. My name is Noble Crosby Annan, and thank you so much for listening and joining us on our social media platforms, 3FM 92.7. Good evening.